Welcome back to the Total Confidence Podcast, Season 3. I have a special guest today I'm super excited to speak with. And the way I discovered her work, I was at the International Enneagram Global Conference in San Francisco. And I was interested in going to her workshop. But I had another workshop, it was like I had to make a decision. And so I went to the first workshop, and I can't remember if it was just too crowded or I left, and I said, let me go and check this out. And so she did a workshop on object relations, and I got there late and I was blown away. I sat there like just the way she laid it out and explained how things from our infancy affect us going into our adult life. But we'll get into that. We have with us today Belinda Gore, Dr. Belinda Gore. She is a senior member of the Global Enneagram community and a pioneer in translating object relations theory into practices for deepening Enneagram wisdom. Using decades of experience as a psychotherapist, coach, author, and teacher, she has developed creative tools for bringing enjoyment and freedom to healthy relationships, allowing us to live beyond the illusions of ego. Belinda was awarded the accredited professional with distinction ranking with the International Enneagram Association and served on the IEA Board of Directors for 3 years. Welcome to Total Confidence Podcast, Belinda.
Thank you so much, Ahmad.
So excited to talk to you. But I always like to go to the origin. How were you introduced to the Enneagram?
Wow, we really are going back now. It was about 1988. And I think Helen Palmer's first book, The Enneagram, had just been published. I was at a different kind of workshop. I'd never heard of the Enneagram before. And somebody had just been to a workshop and said it was really interesting. And then I sort of forgot about it. Then I was visiting friends in Dallas, and there was a copy of Yoga Journal. I think it was Yoga Journal, New Age Journal. And they had an article about the Enneagram. And as soon as I started reading about the type definitions, I'm just a junkie when it comes to understanding how we're the same and how we're different. It's how I got to be a psychologist. And then a friend of mine, Anita, called me one day and said she'd read a book by a Jesuit seminarian who was doing a workshop in Eastern Pennsylvania. We live in Ohio. And would I like to drive over? So Anita and I registered, got in the car, drove to Eastern Pennsylvania, and it was Don Riso and Russ Hudson in, I think it was late 1989 or 1990. And they'd just been teaching together a short period of time. There were 9 of us in the workshop. I mean, they weren't well known yet, which was just amazing. And of course, it's like, yes. So I went back, started training with them, and here we are today.
Wow. That's amazing. You were there from basically the foundational years of the Enneagram. Okay. You wrote a book on, and I love this book, and I thank you for writing it in a language, and you talked about that I can understand, and a person doesn't have to be immersed in medical jargon and psychiatric jargon. So thank you for doing that. But what was the inspiration for writing this book?
Well, the title is Finding Freedom, but the subtitle is Understanding Our Relationships Using Object Relations and the Enneagram. Back in 2006, I'm really dating myself today. Sandra Maitre, who is both an Enneagram teacher and a teacher in the Diamond Approach work, sent out an email to a lot of people in the Enneagram world saying she was starting an international retreat group. And I joined it. And in the Diamond Approach work, there are a lot of references to object relations. But one day, my friend Diana, we were at retreat, and she said, Belinda, do you understand object relations? And I said, no. And so that was my cue that I needed to learn about it better than just sort of pretending, nodding when somebody talked about object relations.
Right.
And I remembered that Don and Russ had talked about the basis of object relations theory back in, I think the second book, Understanding the Enneagram. So I went back, reviewed what I'd been taught, and then really wanted to build more of an Enneagram approach to object relations instead of just the more general object relations that was being used in the Diamond Heart work.
So let's break it down. What exactly is object relations theory?
Yes. And object relations theory comes from about the 1940s and 50s. A group of psychodynamic, meaning sort of Freudian based, the dynamics of the psyche. We're trying to explore how does the personality develop. And the theory says that it's so simple, but so profound, that the self, or if you will, the ego self, develops starting in infancy in our relationships with others. And those relationships are characterized by the bond of emotion. And so in the Enneagram approach, the self develops in relation to three archetypal others: nurturing figures, often mothers; protecting figures, often fathers, but we know that's not always true; and what I call belonging figures, or a belonging field rather than a figure, which is the family or the clan. So we've got nurturing, protecting, belonging. So those three categories of others that we're relating to, we can relate to with three primary emotional responses: attachment, which just means, oh, I'm attached to you. How do I keep this going? Frustration, I got that nurturing, but I can't seem to keep up with it. I can't find it again. Or rejection, which is the nurturing figure rejected or hurt me, so I'm going to take a different route. So attachment, frustration, rejection, plus nurturing, protecting, belonging, you've got a 3x3 grid. And that means that those 9 cells in that matrix define the underlying structure of the personality development of the types, so that each type has an underlying object relation pattern that helps us understand the behaviors we associate with the pattern and what we're really trying to get, or what our motivations are. And it all works so beautifully in the Enneagram system to explain object relations theory, and conversely, to explain the deeper dynamics of our 9 personality possibilities.
Yeah, it just made so much sense. Just taking it back to infancy and us responding to our environment. It was so simple, but yet like I mean, well, let me say this. In your introduction, you state curiously the same reason we want good relationships is why we keep finding ourselves confronting the same old problems. So
Right.
most of our problems are in relationships, right? So, and we're going back to the original relationship of the infant.
Yes. Yes. And we keep replaying that, and we can't figure out how to do it differently because, as we know from the Enneagram world, we're stuck in these unconscious assumptions and beliefs and behaviors.
Yeah.
So we keep spinning around trying to solve it. And the solution is to unpack that pattern so that we stop doing the same old thing all the time.
Yes. You did a demonstration during your workshop, and I believe he was a type 5. And he
Yes.
was great at doing that. And he had a negative viewpoint of one of his coworkers, and you took it all the way back to him being in that position. I just thought that was fascinating. It goes back to how we developed. I just think that's brilliant.
He was amazing, frankly, and an
Yeah.
unusual situation because usually if he's aggravated with somebody in his work life today, it usually follows the pattern of being aggravated with somebody in his early life. But his situation was his coworker was acting like he used to act.
Wow.
And
Yes. Yeah.
he developed all this negativity to try to change his own behavior. And it's like his coworker was getting by with it, and he was totally annoyed about that. It was great. It was a great person for a demo. I never know what I'm going to get. And he was excellent.
Yes, yes. You talk about in your book one of the subtle ways we objectify people, and again, object relations, and us seeing people not as connected to ourselves or a person like us, but an object. And you use the term I it rather than I thou.
Right.
And you gave an example about like people having political views and things. Could you kind of expound on that? Like how do we
Right.
objectify people like that just based on differences?
Right. So what Enneagram type do you identify with, Ahmad?
I'm a type 5.
All right, good. Okay. So in your type 5 structure, the Enneagram pattern is rejection with the belonging field. So if we know that early on in your life, you're going to have a tendency to anticipate rejection when you're in groups.
Yes.
And so you have taken your pattern and objectified the group because that they're just like playing roles in the story or the script that your ego tried to make sense of the world early on. And it's like, oh, here's this story about how life is, and here's how the characters play their roles. So if you keep expecting everybody to play those roles, you know what? They will, because you keep finding people who respond that way. You respond to them in a way that keeps that old story going. When you start recognizing, oh, that foundational story isn't true. Sometimes I didn't feel like I belonged in my family, but here are the ways I do belong in the world. Then you stop seeing other people as characters in your drama, and you see that they're individuals having their object relation patterns playing out in their lives. Then you and I identify as a 3, you and I engage with each other, and I appreciate what your dynamics are, and you appreciate what mine are. And we have compassion for each other when we slip into the old I it role, but we get out of it, and you become a thou, not a nit. I become a thou, a person. And that's language from Martin Buber, who was a philosopher a century ago. But I think it's really powerful language so that we learn to see the ways we assume we know who other people are and what they're thinking and doing. We don't know. We have to
Yes.
communicate. We have to, we have to have conversation. We have to be open to each other. So that's what that was about when I was writing about it.
Yeah, it touched me personally, and even now, as you described that for the type 5, because I see that I do that. I did that like this week. um,
Yes.
at work, I didn't feel valued, and I felt,
Mhm.
and then I got a review, and it was like all positive.
Yeah.
So, but the story of people
Mhm.
rejecting me, and I realized you just named something that I do so much, and even in relationships, I've hurt different relationships because I create this story. If
Yes.
somebody doesn't respond to me in enough time, even I reached out to a friend to come on my podcast, and they were busy. And I created a
Mm.
story that, oh, they just got too big, and oh, they just sell. And we had a conversation. There was none of that. It was all in my head. So it's
Yep. Great.
like,
But good for you for having the conversation, because I hear people all the time saying, well, he did this to me and he can't get by with that. And I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. Or she's acting like blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so we start treating people like they're, well, I like the thing that they're characters in a drama instead of real people that we
yeah.
can talk to.
Yeah, I just find it really helpful, especially as I read the part of the type 5. But I think it's important at this time, let's define the key terms that you use in this book. Like, use the term primary others we experience as
Mhm.
infants. What
Right.
what does what are primary others in the context of object relations?
Well, in the beginning of the theory, the primary others were mother, father, and initially it was taught as the mother father combination. But we know that biological mothers are not always the nurturing person. So the archetypal mother is the nurturing other, and the archetypal father is the protecting other. And the archetypal combo, as a psychologist, as a therapist, I saw that families are more than the mother and father together.
Yes,
It's
yes,
the whole field of siblings, pets, home, neighbors, extended family, can be a whole lot. Where do I belong? What's my tribe? How, where do I fit? So that's the primal other. So the primal archetypes are mother, father, maybe family, but we do better so that we're not gender identified to do nurturing, protecting, and belonging or inclusion.
and then you talk about dominant effect.
Yes.
Um,
And that's what we talked about before, that it's in psychological terminology, it's affect, because affect, with the emphasis on the first syllable, is an emotion. And if we, object relations theory just said it was affect, an affect. The dominant affects, though, are attachment, frustration, and rejection. And we all play all of those all the time. We Attachment is what most of us experience a lot of the time, because that's how the central ego is built. We have a connection with something. My cat, a book, a glass of water.
yeah,
We it serves a need, it's positive. And so what we do in the attachment is we say, "Ooh, I like my cat, my book, and my water. What do I have to do to keep sustaining that connection?"
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes we get frustrated. My cat runs away, I spill the
Mm-hmm.
glass of water. In terms of relationship, it's I had someone who nurtured me, but she wasn't there all the time,
Yeah.
or she got tired of me, or when I cried, she didn't come every time. Um, the protector was he wasn't consistent, so I didn't feel secure, and I keep trying to find security. That's type 1. And 4s are frustrated with the family. If I could just find the right group to belong to, I'd, I'd feel belonging and meeting and so
Yeah.
forth. The other alternative is to feel rejected. And I'm going to go into a little riff here because
Cool.
I think this is so important. 8, 2, and 5 are the 3 rejection types. 8 was connected to the nurturing figure, but the nurturing figure seemed to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
So they felt rejected. So to cope, because if your nurturing figure rejects you and you're like 6 months old or 2 years old, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
But so I'm going to reject mommy or the nurturer, and I'm going to go be like daddy. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
be resilient, and I'm going to nurture myself
Mm-hmm.
by being strong and powerful. 2s are connected to the father figure or the protecting figure, but he's absent or inadequate. He
Mm-hmm.
rejects. So I'm not going to feel safe and secure with my father figure. I'm going to go be like the nurturing figure. Everybody will love me, and that's how I'll be safe and secure. Now we come to 5s like you, and it seems like the whole belonging field may have rejected you. So, what's the 5 going to do? The resilience is I'm going to create my own world
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, in my head. I'm going to play Dungeons and Dragons, or I'm going to play computer games, or I'm going to, write stories, or I'm going to do something
Yeah.
that gives me an inner world I can inhabit where
Yeah.
I belong. I shouldn't be asking you questions, but
Sure.
can you
Sure.
relate to that? Did
I,
did
I,
you
I,
do that in your life?
I totally did as a child, as early as 3 and 4. I read encyclopedias, and I could just take, I could take like combs and brushes. I had toys, but I could take combs, brushes, pens, and create these characters and everything. So yeah, I had
I love it.
my own little world. I was
Yes,
the youngest child, so I totally relate to that. A
I
lot of
love
it,
it.
you read it.
Yeah. And that I call that resilience. You're a little child and you don't feel like you belong. What are you going to do? Instead of becoming uh, psychopathic, instead of becoming schizophrenic, instead of becoming totally depressed, you create your own world and live in it. And it works to give you enough of a foundation so that you develop into a healthy, uh, intelligent, resilient, developed type 5. Great.
Yeah, yeah. You actually wrote that inside every 5 is a child who wants to be in charge and might enjoy being a bully to get their way. And but what about closest friend is a type 8, and he talks about that all the time. He has like I have an alter ego where he said everybody thinks you're the nice person and I'm the mean one, but he said they don't know you. Like I do have this mentality. So I read that, it just really
Yeah,
touched me.
that's the arrow from 5 to 8. That's right. And so um, while we say that arrow is the point of integration for five, like you need to develop the strength and the confidence to step out in the world, it's also your soul child. And
Mm.
the soul child is the part of us. It's the lower levels really of our point of integration that we have to develop and integrate. So it's great. You've got your friend who you feel safe enough with and supported enough, and you just let it go so that you can feel what it's like to feel that eightness. And that as that matures, you get healthier.
Yeah, it's as I was preparing for this, I was like, okay, this is some good medicine for me prior to coming on the show. This is not like it really touched me to read that. But let me back up. I want to, because we have people that listen on different levels. We got people who
Mhm.
are in the Enneagram and they're deep into it. And I have people that just listen because they like me. So they're
Yeah,
kind of learning the Enneagram. You talked about the three centers of intelligence in relation
yes,
to Enneagram theory. Can we talk a little bit about that for those who may not be familiar with that and how that correlates
absolutely.
to the Enneagram?
Yeah. Most people, when you ask them what's your center of intelligence, they say my head. My brain's the center of intelligence. And it is one of the centers. Um, and we might call a center of intelligence a place in the body where the nervous system has so many connections that it makes like a nexus or a center of neural conversation. That's one.
Hmm.
But there are two other centers of intelligence. Another one is in the chest. And so while we don't think of being smart, maybe in the heart center, in the language of our culture, we say, he's got a lot of heart,
Hmm.
or trust your heart,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
things like that,
Yeah.
that say we understand there's some wisdom in the heart center. And the heart center relates to the center of the brain, which is called the limbic system. And it's where our primary emotion exists. So, isn't that interesting? It's really in the heart where our first personality development happens as we emotionally relate between self and other. So, this is a center of intelligence, and we learn to identify our feelings, trust our feelings. Um, well, in identifying them, be able to say, oh, I feel sad. What's the sadness connected to in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
So, similarly, there's another nerve plexus in the belly below the navel. And that's called the gut center or the belly center. Um, I think I lost it. The number, the there are more nerve endings in the belly than there are in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people talk about the vagus nerve that connects the brain and the belly, and there's 9 times more information coming up from the belly into the brain than vice versa. But, we do the same thing if we look at language, the figures of speech, like um, he didn't have the guts to do that, or I have a gut feeling that this isn't the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of, we could spend half an hour coming up with little phrases that help us know that there is wisdom in the gut that we need to pay attention to. And we learn that really through what's called somatic awareness,
Mm.
or being aware of what, where do I feel tight or heavy or empty? In the chest and the heart center, what are my emotions? As well as in the head center, which is what am I awake to? What am I curious about? What data am I collecting? And when we have all three awake and operating in balance, we're going to be present. The more present we are, the healthier we are.
So, and I read that towards the end when you were talking about the five, and one of the things you talked about the five and saying that we have to disengage from storing mental messages about being rejected, and instead find their belly center strength to step out in the world as it is. Is it just a practice of just, and you talk about somatic work, which a lot of times that's kind of missing when people go to therapy, is, they neglect the somatic part about it. Is it a thing where, like, how do you integrate in a healthy way as opposed to just, okay, let me just step out there? Is it more complex than just stepping out there, or is it like a process or practices that lead someone into developing that center that might be repressed?
Well, we have clues in the Enneagram about which center is likely to be more repressed given your type. So 5, the structure for 5 is an overuse of the head center. So, you used your head center a lot when you were creating stories and characters and all of that when you were a kid. The head center is overused. Then the heart center comes in. And sometimes people say that 5s aren't very emotional. 5s are very emotional. They just don't want to share it with everybody.
Yes.
So you care deeply
I do.
about what you care about. You're just a little more private about it.
Yes. Yeah.
But the belly center types, which are 9, 4, and 5, have a tendency to withdraw in the face of overwhelm. And it's cyclical, because if I tend to withdraw, then the world outside can seem more overwhelming. And the more overwhelming it is, the more I want to withdraw. So the language I was using was to support that for you as a 5, developing your belly center strength will be really good for you. Now, what's the best example of belly center strength? 8. So hanging out with your type 8 friend is a good thing. You might get a little bossy and controlling, but practicing speaking up, being a little more willing to take action on the ideas you have. So taking action is a belly center quality. So you don't have to just go bam and be out there in the world, because quite frankly, it's hard to sustain that if it doesn't come naturally. Can you think of an example of that from your life?
It's almost like you're like reading my mind, or like, me, you know what I'm saying? Because I was thinking that, okay, so there are times I've had, and I use the example at work, when something I didn't feel was right, and I challenge it, and I go into my 8. I do it respectfully, and it's unexpected.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, I don't know if you've seen the Spider-Man movies, but he puts the Venom suit on, and Venom is just like pure energy and everything. He does everything the reserved Spider-Man wouldn't do. He's unrestricted, but it scares me, but it feels good for a short period of time. But I always say that it's not sustainable. I'm exhausted after that. So when I'm challenging situations and things, it feels good in the moment.
Yes.
But I'm like, oh my God, so that's the part, like I don't have the energy to sustain it like that. So yeah.
Right. So one thing you can do then as a follow-up is identify simple practices that help you get your energy back. Because the kind of energy you're talking about is energy from your belly center. So after you speak up, challenge something, and you go, oh my gosh, I'm totally wiped, go for a walk
Mm.
or, do something physical so that your physical body gets a simple way to restore itself with physical energy. Are there things you like to do? Like, I don't know, my stepson, who's a 4, who's also a withdrawn type, he deals with things by going to play, what kind of golf is it? Frisbee golf,
Okay. Okay.
you know, that he can do by himself,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it gets him outside, gets him moving, and it's restorative for him.
I like to run, and
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna say this because I got another friend. Two of my closest friends are 8s.
Uh-huh.
And my friend Jason, he's deep into the Enneagram, and he always tells me, look, man, he said, man, I want you to riff. He said, stop trying to be so kind. So I'm gonna put my questions away and I'm riffing. So he'll be happy to see that.
Good.
Yeah, I like to run. I
Mm-hmm.
love to run. I didn't know I could run as a child.
Uh-huh.
I had a complex, and I was actually applied to be a police officer years ago, and I had to pass a physical test. So I had a friend that was a track coach, and he took me out there one day in the rain. I thought we weren't going to do it because it was raining, but he pushed me,
Yeah.
and I realized I could run. And so running feels so good. I feel so
Yay.
free when I run. And so yeah, that's my exercise of choice. I don't do it enough though. So
It's great though, because you love to do it. It's available to you almost all the time because all you need is your body in some place unobstructed. And so just keep in mind that whenever you use that belly center energy to stand up for yourself or challenge something, follow it up with a nice run because that'll help you restore your energy. Anything that's belly center, action, being in the body, being in nature, those are all good things to help restore ourselves when we're physically depleted. Now, some people, I mean, of course, when we're physically depleted, sometimes we just need to sleep,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's always a good thing too.
yeah,
But we learn the things that help us so that when we've tried out new behavior and it's a little difficult,
yes,
that
yeah,
what we get to do then is we get to go to some tried and true, just simple practices that help us feel good again. I'm a social 3. If I've gone through something stressful, I like to talk. So I like to find somebody who I feel that nurturance, because it's 3 is related to an attachment with the nurturing figure.
yeah, yeah,
And I can receive nurturance by talking with somebody that I'm not trying to perform well, not
yeah,
trying to be successful.
yeah,
I'm just wanting to say, we've got a good connection. I
yes,
feel good about the connection. So now my energy is restored and I can go on. Writing a book was really hard for me because I couldn't, um, I could talk for a week. I mean, I can just talk. But to write a book means I have to construct sentences and I don't know who I'm talking to. And I
mm,
don't get the give and take feedback. So it was really hard. It took me a long time. Oh, well, you just put one foot in front of the other and keep going. And I learned to talk to people. I learned to, if I needed some feedback, to ask for it. Um, and for me, then that changes my story, which as a three is I have to perform well
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
people will admire me and then they'll love me and nurture me. And I have to learn I don't have to perform well. I just show up. And
That's
so
beautiful.
we learn all these things as we explore. You and I right now are just talking about our object relation patterns and how to not get caught in them. That's all it is.
Yeah, in the few minutes that we have left, and I just hear my friend Jason, okay, I'm dropping out of my head and it's my heart. So I'm pushing all the heady stuff around, pushing all the heady stuff out. Um, what has been the most rewarding part, if anything comes to mind, as far as your work in object relations?
Mm.
Is there an experience, aha moment that you've seen somebody have a breakthrough that comes to mind that just like really just made you ecstatic and know that were on the right path?
Mm. There've been so many. There've been so many it actually brings kind of tears to my eyes because I teach on Zoom most of the time. And I wasn't really sure of myself. I was taking what I knew about the Enneagram, I was putting it into this 3x3 matrix,
Mm.
and I was trying it out. And I do little demos of an exercise, and somebody would go, well, like you did, oh my gosh, it's like you're in my head.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm going to talk about, I mean, the story that comes to me is the other
Cool.
demo from the Enneagram conference
Yeah,
in uh, in July in San Francisco. And this was a young woman in a relationship with a man who had a, a daughter who was 16. And we were trying, she just didn't know what to do, and she was ready to leave the relationship. And as we talked about it, we made up sort of almost like character comic names. So it was the bratty
yeah,
daughter,
yeah. I remember. Yeah.
and it was the guilty father, and it was the all suffering, amazing girlfriend.
Yeah.
And what we did was explore for her from her early life experience, her tendency to get frustrated and leave, because she's a type 1, which is a frustration type.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she was frustrated with her boyfriend and was ready to leave. And as we got into the characters, she saw that she didn't have to leave.
Mm.
She could just go to her boyfriend and say, here's what I need.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It sounds so simple,
Yeah.
but as a one, she believed she had to figure it out on her own,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
the people she needed were just going to frustrate her, so she'd just go take care of it herself and then be the reformer for everybody else. And
Yeah.
for her to get into that soft place where she could say, my feelings are hurt, I
Mm.
need this kind of time from you. You could just feel the ocean wave move,
Yes.
the
Yes.
tidal wave. You could
Yes.
feel it in the room. And those times when we feel the shift happening, that's that's what's nurturing to me more than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It
so when, yeah, Well, when
Okay, go.
people I know who've read the book and they say, "Oh, thank you for this exercise. It helped so much."
Mm,
That's what I care about now. I have a 4-wing. I don't have a 2-wing about being a helper, but I love my own feeling of a shift when I find the freedom to not be caught in a pattern. And I'm in a relationship right now where I'm having to practice all of these things
yeah,
a lot, but I'm getting free of some patterns that go back 2 generations in my family
yeah,
about who women are supposed to be and what men are like and what you can expect from a relationship. And it's not true anymore.
yeah,
My
yeah,
mother did what the best she could, her sisters, my grandmother, my great grandmother, but it's not my story.
yeah, yeah. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And it gives, more meaning to finding freedom, why you chose the title, finding
Right,
freedom. These
exactly.
patterns bind us. As we close, and I promise I'm not trying to make you cry. I seem to make all the hard types cry on the show for whatever reason. I Beatrice Chestnut was on here, and I said, "Oh man, I made her cry." So, but I want to talk as we close about the meaning of several people you mentioned in the book, and the impact they've had on you. Let's start with Don Richard Riso,
Yeah.
and his work and how, and of course, Russ Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
What do these two people mean to you personally?
Wow. Yeah. So, yeah, you are going to make me cry.
I'm
But you know
sorry.
what? You're not making me cry. You're evoking deep emotion.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, yeah.
And 1990, that was what? That was 30, almost 34 years ago. And I look back on the person I was then. And sometimes, this was so far back that I even talked with Don on the phone,
Mm,
um, and sometimes I get so mad at him
mm,
because he'd be his own certain way. And um, when he died, I think sometimes it happens that when people die, we realize who they've been. That um, his dedication, his great mind, his commitment to emotional and especially spiritual freedom and healthiness,
mm,
and giving himself to the work. And then, I met them when they'd only been working together like 6 months.
oh, wow.
And we
Wow.
called Russ Rusty back then. And he seemed like a kid to me. And um, I tell him now, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for being my teacher. I'm
yeah,
older than he is, but he and Don brought that, what for me is that deep boorish love
mm,
of spirit, of the human journey,
yeah,
and feeling into how it's what we're all here for, is
yeah,
to take this journey. That's what's more important than anything. And to help us learn how to do that. And so, I spent a lot of time with them for my first several years. Then I went back later. I was going to train to teach with them, and various things didn't work so well. But I spent a lot of time with them in the 90s and early 2000s. And the amount of just material and wisdom and insight gave me the tools I needed to do my own work and then
mm,
to learn how to teach. Um, so I think Don and Russ and Sandra Maitri are the people in my life who um, that we talk about people whose shoulders we stand on.
Yeah.
I've been in Sandra's International Retreat Group, well, since 2006. So when I think about Gurdjieff, who had to, in the Seekers After Truth group, they had to travel for 2 years trying to find spiritual teachers and come back and bring the teaching. And here we can sit down on Zoom or go to a conference together and hear these amazingly developed human beings who teach us how to do it.
Yeah.
We don't have to go live in a monastery.
Yeah.
We don't go to the desert. We live our lives in what Russ calls the fourth way, the Gurdjieffian fourth way. We just live our lives and we get to learn about how to be, Sandra uses the term a lot, becoming humans of being. We're not human beings, we're humans of being, that we take away the layers, the veils, the restrictions, so that our beingness, our true nature, can shine through. And can we sustain it 24/7? I don't know about you, but I sure can't.
No.
But I know what it is, and I know what the tools are, and I have a community of people, with people like you. You and I can sit down here on this Wednesday morning and talk deeply.
Yes.
It's amazing.
This is beautiful. I appreciate your time. I know you squares me in day before Thanksgiving.
And there's nothing I'd rather be doing right now than talking with you. It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much.
This was beautiful, and I appreciate just you, and being here with you in this time and allowing me to shift. I had this real heady interview, and I'm saying I'm interviewing the book and I'm not interviewing her. Let me push this to the side. I need to talk to you and connect with you. So the book is Finding Freedom, and the website is belindagore.com.
Right.
And you offer classes. What are some of the things you offer?
Yes, I have online classes on object relations and the Enneagram. The next one starting will be January 11th. You can find out about it at belindagore.com under courses, or I'm not sure exactly where it is, but you'll see it there.
Yeah.
And I have 3. Right now, it's 3 sections of 7 weeks. So part 1 is 7 weeks, and then if you want to go on, part 2 is 7 weeks, and then there's part 3 now, and I think we're going into part 4 because there are all these folks who have these great questions, and it's like, let's figure this out too. So we are.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I hope we can talk again soon.
Yes.
Belinda Gore, please get the book Finding Freedom. It is available on Amazon. This is Ahmad Wazir, Total Confidence Podcast, Season 3, beautiful conversation. We're thankful for our guest, Belinda Gore, and we will see you soon.